Imagine a voice whispering in the dark, a voice that knows your regrets, your longings, your unfinished conversations. It tells you to do something impossible, to plant a baseball field in the middle of your cornfield, to risk everything for a dream that doesn't make sense. And you do it because something inside you knows it matters. Coming up on Real Talk Rewind, we slide into the true meaning of Field of Dreams, the story behind the Iowa cornfield, the ghost that walked its diamond, and a line that became one of the most iconic in movie history. If you build it, he will come. We'll uncover the hidden details, near disasters, and why this movie still resonates decades later.
For a half hour of high adventure.
And welcome back to Real Talk Rewind. I'm your host, Chris, and this is the show where we pull apart the stories that stuck with us, the ones that shaped our culture, bent our emotions, and made us question something deeper about life. Movies, history, events, and people. We rewind them not just to remember, but to understand. Today we're stepping onto the baseball diamond in the middle of an Iowa cornfield, a place where ghosts walk, fathers and sons reconnect, and a voice that whispers a line that became one of the most iconic in movie history. If you build it, he will come. This is the story of Field of Dreams. From book to screen, the hidden details, the near disasters that almost killed the production, and why this film still matters decades later. And trust me, by the time we're done, you're going to see this movie in a completely different light. So grab your glove, grab a hot dog. No, actually, scratch that. We're in a cornfield, so maybe grab some corn. So let's rewind. Before Field of Dreams was ever a movie, it was a book. And not just any book. It was written by a Canadian author named W.P. Kinsella. The book's original title was Shoeless Joe, and it was published in 1982. Now, W.P. Kinsella, whose first name was William Patrick, though he went by Bill, was a fascinating character himself. He didn't publish his first novel until he was in his 40s. Before that, he worked odd jobs, drove a taxi, and taught at the Iowa Writers' Workshop. The man knew about taking chances late in life, which makes it all more fitting that he wrote a book about a middle-aged farmer who risks everything on a crazy dream. Here's the thing. When you read Kinsella's novel, you realize just how quirky and magical it really is. It's about a farmer named Ray Kinsella. Yeah, the author named the protagonist after himself, which is either confident or kind of weird, you decide, who hears a mysterious voice urging him to build a baseball field in his cornfield. He does it, and the ghosts of baseball legends start showing up. Sound familiar, right? That's the foundation of the movie we know. But in the book, the story goes even further into fantasy. Instead of the reclusive writer played by James Earl Jones in the film, Terrence Mann, the book actually had Ray seeking out the real J.D. Salinger, author of Catcher in the Rye. That's right, the reclusive, mysterious, notoriously private Salinger was written in as a character. And not just as a cameo. He goes on the whole journey with Ray, travels to the baseball games, even ends up walking into the cornfield at the end. Now, if you know anything about J.D. Salinger, you know this was a problem. The man spent half his life hiding from the public. He stopped publishing in 1965 and basically became a hermit in New Hampshire. The idea of putting him in as a character in a movie? Yeah, his lawyers would have a field day with that. Actually, they kind of did. Salinger reportedly threatened legal action when he heard about the book, though Kinsella claimed it was protected as fiction. Hollywood quickly realized this wasn't going to fly. You can't just throw a living, lawsuit-happy author into your feel-good baseball movie without consequences. So the filmmakers invented the character of Terrence Mann to replace him. The decision ended up being perfect, because it gave us James Earl Jones delivering one of the most powerful monologues about baseball and America ever put to screen. But here's a fun detail. Kinsella was apparently a bit salty about the change. He felt Salinger was integral to the story's meaning, the idea that artists retreat from the world when they feel disillusioned, and that sometimes they need to be pulled back into life. But even Kinsella had to admit that James Earl Jones brought something special to the role that transcended the original vision. So how did Shoeless Joe turn into Field of Dreams? The adaptation was written and directed by Phil Alden Robinson, who wasn't exactly a household name at the time. In fact, his biggest credit before this was writing Rhinestone, the movie where Sylvester Stallone tries to become a country singer. Yeah, not exactly a confidence-inspiring resume for a movie about magical baseball ghosts. But Robinson fell in love with Kinsella's novel when his wife gave it to him. He read it on the plane and immediately saw it as a film. The problem was, nobody else did. Studios passed on it repeatedly. Too weird, too sentimental, too risky. Baseball movies weren't exactly lighting up the box office in the mid-'80s. And a baseball movie with ghosts? Come on. But Robinson was persistent. He spent years trying to get it made. Finally, Lawrence Gordon, a producer who worked on films like Die Hard and 48 Hours, saw the potential. Gordon brought it to Universal Studios, but even then it was an uphill battle. Universal Studios didn't like the title Shoeless Joe. They thought it sounded like a movie about a homeless man, not a fantasy drama about baseball and redemption. Marketing teams were in focus groups, and apparently people heard Shoeless Joe and thought either poverty or some kind of weird indie comedy, so they renamed it Field of Dreams. Now here's a little twist. W.P. Kinsella, the author, later admitted that he actually preferred the new title. He felt it got right to the heart of the story: hope, mystery, and the power of dreams. Sometimes the studio suits get it right, even when it takes focus groups and market research to get there. Casting was another critical piece, and another battle. Kevin Costner, who was fresh off of Bull Durham, wasn't the studio's first choice. They worried people would think that he was just repeating another baseball role. Studio executives wanted a bigger name, someone with more box office pull. They floated names like Tom Hanks, who turned it down because he thought it was too similar to Big. Harrison Ford was considered but passed. Costner, though, loved the script and fought for it. He saw the film not just as a sports movie, but a story about belief, family, and reconciliation. He actually took a pay cut to be in it. Now, looking back, it's hard to imagine anyone else playing Ray Kinsella. Costner brought his earnest vulnerability that the role required, a man willing to look foolish because he believed in something bigger than himself. Then there was Ray Liotta as Shoeless Joe Jackson. Liotta wasn't well known at the time. Goodfellas wouldn't come out until the following year, but he had this intensity and charisma that just made him perfect as the ghost of one of baseball's most tragic figures. Shoeless Joe Jackson was banned from baseball after the 1919 Black Sox scandal, where players were accused of throwing the World Series. Whether Joe was actually involved is still debated, but the man could hit like nobody's business, and Liotta captured that mixture of grace and sadness perfectly. And then we got James Earl Jones as Terrence Mann, and Burt Lancaster in his final film role as Doc Graham, the small-town doctor who got one moment on the field before returning to his real life. That casting alone gave the film a timeless quality. Lancaster was a Hollywood legend, and getting him for what was essentially a supporting role was a coup. He died just a few years after the film came out, making his performance even more poignant. When it came time to shoot, the production actually built the baseball field in a real Iowa cornfield near Dyersville, on a property owned by the Lansing family. The set was so authentic that when film wrapped, the field was left standing. It became, and still is, a tourist attraction. Thousands of people visit it every year, and the locals have preserved it as a place where anyone can walk onto the diamond, play catch, and feel a little of that movie magic. But getting to that point was nearly a disaster, multiple times. First, there was the corn situation. One lesser-known detail is the corn almost ruined the production. It was planted late, and by the time they needed it to film, it wasn't tall enough. Now picture this, you're making a movie where the entire visual depends on towering corn concealing a baseball field, and your corn is like knee-high. Not exactly dramatic. The filmmakers actually had to truck in additional corn stock and prop them up to make the cornfield look right. They basically built fake corn to supplement the real corn. Then by the end of the shooting, the real corn had grown so tall, because, that's what corn does, that they had to trim it down to get the right shots. Mother Nature does not care about your production schedule. The second problem was the weather. Iowa weather in the springtime is terribly unpredictable. They dealt with rain delays, unseasonably cold temperatures that made the actors miserable, and at one point, a storm that nearly destroyed the field. The crew had to rebuild portions of it overnight. Phil Robinson later said there were moments where he thought the film was just cursed. The third problem? Money. The budget was tight, around $20 million, which sounds like a lot, but really isn't for a major studio film. Every delay cost them. Every reshoot hurt. There were genuine concerns that Universal would pull the plug halfway through, but they kept going. And some of the film's most iconic moments came from improvisation and happy accidents. That iconic shot at the end where the headlights stretch for miles and people line up to see the field, that wasn't done with computers. CGI wasn't really a thing yet in 1989, at least not like it is now. The crew actually recruited locals to drive their cars, arranging them into the long glowing line of hope and curiosity that closed out the film. They had to coordinate hundreds of vehicles, timing it perfectly as the sun set. It took them multiple takes and a small army of production assistants with walkie-talkies, but it worked, and it became one of the most remembered images in the movie. Another fun detail, the voice that Ray hears throughout the film, "If you build it, he will come, ease his pain, go the distance," was provided by an uncredited actor named Ed Harris. No, not that Ed Harris, a different guy. And apparently they recorded it in such a way that it sounds both otherworldly and intimate at the same time, which is harder to pull off than you think. Now, just for a second, I want to take a quick detour here, because if we're talking about Field of Dreams, we need to talk about the real Shoeless Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson was one of the greatest hitters in baseball history. His lifetime batting average was .356, third highest ever. Babe Ruth modeled his swing after Joe's. Ty Cobb, who wasn't exactly generous with compliments, called him the greatest natural hitter I ever saw. But in 1919, Joe was implicated in the Black Sox scandal. 8 players on the Chicago White Sox were accused of conspiring with gamblers to throw the World Series. They were all banned from baseball for life by Commissioner Kinsella Mountain Landis, even though they were acquitted in court. Now here's the thing. To this day, nobody knows if Joe was really involved. He played phenomenally during that World Series. He hit .375, had the only home run, committed no errors. Doesn't exactly sound like a guy who's trying to lose, but he supposedly took money, or knew about the conspiracy, and that was enough apparently. Then there's that famous story about the young boy who approached Joe outside the courthouse and said, "Say it ain't so, Joe." Whether that actually happened or not, it captures the heartbreak. He was a hero, a fallen one, a man who came from nothing, worked in mills as a kid, couldn't read or write, but could hit a baseball better than almost anyone who ever lived. And he was cast out. That's why his appearance in Field of Dreams is so powerful. The movie gives him redemption. It gives him a chance to play again in a place where the rules of the real world don't apply. It's wish fulfillment, sure, but it's the kind we desperately want to believe in. When Field of Dreams premiered in 1989, critics didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't exactly a sports movie. It wasn't really a fantasy movie either. It was sentimental, emotional, and unapologetically earnest. Something in Hollywood rarely takes a chance on, especially in the cynical late 80s. Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars and called it the kind of movie Frank Capra might have directed. Some critics, though, thought it was too sappy. Others loved it. Audiences, though? Audiences connected. The film earned 3 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Original Score. It didn't win any. That year's Best Picture went to Driving Miss Daisy, which, let's be honest, hasn't exactly aged into the cultural powerhouse that Field of Dreams has. Over the years, it's become more than a movie. It's a cultural touchstone. In 2017, the Library of Congress selected for preservation in the National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. That's a fancy way of saying it's a permanent part of the American culture. People quote it constantly. "If you build it, he will come." Has been parodied, referenced, and repurposed in everything from business seminars to political speeches to other movies. The Iowa field has become a pilgrimage site. Over 100,000 people visit it annually. They play catch, they walk the bases. Some people cry. It's treated with reverence, like a church of dreams and second chances. And for many fathers and sons, it's a movie they share together, a quiet reminder of the bonds between generations and the things left unsaid that we wish we could go back and fix. So here's the real talk. On the surface, Field of Dreams is a movie about baseball, but deep down, it's about something much heavier. The longing we all carry for second chances. Think about it. Ray Kinsella builds that field because he's haunted by regrets. Regrets about his relationship with his father, regrets about never saying the right things, regrets about time wasted. His father died before they could reconcile. They fought about Ray's life choices, about values, about what mattered, and then his dad was gone. And all Ray had was the weight of things left unsaid. The field becomes a place where he can confront those ghosts, literally and emotionally. It's not really about baseball. Baseball is just a bridge. It's the one language his father spoke fluently. The one thing they could have shared if pride and stubbornness hadn't gotten in the way. Most of us carry something like that. A moment we wish we could redo. Words we wish we'd said. People we wish we reconciled with before it was too late. Maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a sibling, or a friend, a mentor, or an old lover. Someone who had slipped away before we could fix what was broken. Life doesn't give us magic cornfields. We don't get voices telling us exactly what to build or where to go. But the movie reminds us of something important. It's never too late to try. Not literally, maybe. We can't bring people back from the dead as much as we'd like to. But emotionally and spiritually, we can still do the work. We can still build something that honors those relationships. We can still make peace with the past, even if the person isn't here to see it. There's a reason that final scene between Ray and his father hit so hard. It's not just about the game of catch. It's about connection, forgiveness, love that was buried under years of silence and resentment. And it's about the courage to build something, even when people call you crazy, even when it costs you everything. Because somewhere deep down, you believe that it matters. Ray's neighbors think he lost his mind. His wife's brother wants to foreclose on the farm. Financially, he's destroying his family, and yet he keeps going, because the voice tells him to, because something inside of him knows this is what he needs to do. That's faith, not religious faith necessarily, but the faith that if you follow what calls to you, even when it doesn't make sense, you'll find what you've been looking for. And here's the thing. The movie doesn't punish him for it. It rewards him. People come. At the end, we see those headlights stretching to the horizon. It's not just vindication for Ray. It's proof that when you build something meaningful, when you create space for connection and healing, people will find it. They need it. We live in a world that demands practicality, proof, ROI, 5-year plans. Nobody gets rewarded for plowing under their crops to build a baseball field. Nobody gets celebrated for chasing whispers and intuitions. We're taught to ignore that voice, to be reasonable, to play it safe. But what if the voice is right? What if the crazy thing is actually the sanest thing that you could do? Field of Dreams asks us to consider that maybe the risks we're most afraid of taking are the ones that lead to our deepest healing. Maybe the thing that looks like ruin from the outside is actually salvation from the inside. So here's the question. What's your field of dreams? What's the thing in your life that you've been too scared to build, too hesitant to try, because you thought people would laugh? What's the relationship you left unrepaired? What's the dream you've abandoned because it didn't make any practical sense? The truth is, if you build it, whatever it is for you, the right people will come. Maybe not in the way you expect, maybe not in the timeline that you want, but they will come. Because when you create something true, something from the deepest part of yourself, it resonates. People feel it. They're drawn to it, even if they can't explain why. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the thing that you were really building all along wasn't for them. It was for you. It was the process of building itself, the act of choosing belief over criticism, hope over fear, connection over isolation, that will heal you. That's going to wrap up this episode of Real Talk Rewind. Field of Dreams isn't just a baseball movie. It's not even really about baseball at all. It's a reminder that life's biggest risks, the ones people don't understand, the ones that look foolish from the outside, can lead us to our deepest healing. And sometimes, building the thing that you believe in, even when it costs you everything, is the only way to find connection you've been missing. It's about fathers and sons, yes, but it's bigger than that. It's about all of us stumbling through life with our regrets and our ghosts, looking for a way to come back to the people and the dreams we lost along the way. And it tells us that sometimes, just sometimes, if we're brave enough to plow under what's safe and plant something impossible, we might just get our second chance. If this episode made you stop and think, do me a favor, share it with a friend, leave a rating wherever you're listening, and let's keep these conversations alive. And if you got your own Field of Dreams story, a time you took a crazy risk, a time you built something nobody understood, I want to hear from you. Send me an email at realtalkrewindshow@gmail.com or hit me up on Instagram or TikTok. We are all out here trying to figure out what field we're supposed to build. And I'll leave you with this. Don't wait for your cornfield. Don't wait for a voice in the dark to tell you what to build. Start now. Take the risk now. Have the conversation now. Build the thing, make the call, take the leap. Whatever it is you've been putting off because you're scared of what people will think or what might go wrong. The people that are meant to show up will find you. And even if they don't, you have built something that mattered. You'll have followed that voice, that pull, that crazy illogical feeling that says, this is what I need to do. And who knows? Maybe you'll look up one day and see headlights coming stretching all the way to the horizon. Until next time, this is Real Talk Rewind. I'm your host, Chris. Thanks for listening.